There are a lot of people watching this right now who are feeling incensed. They see how political she is, how she tried to play the race card. We expect this to keep going as this prosecution keeps on. And they're feeling kind of bummed out, Ashleigh. I've heard from a lot of them since the judge's ruling. I'm sure you are too. But how do you see the import of what happened here? You know, you finding this story, moving to disqualify, the evidentiary hearing, like where are we today versus January 1st before you'd filed any of this?
I love that question because that's what I think about often. Before we filed this, none of this was known to the world. So there was a small group of us that knew this, but the world didn't know this. And so, there was a very different image of this prosecution and a very different image of the DA's office. And one of the things that Ms. Willis has always run on is transparency. And that is one of the guiding principles that I practice by is transparency. I'm very transparent, which is, I'm a defense lawyer, so I don't have to be transparent, but I am, and I believe in transparency. And so, bringing this to the public and bringing this to the court was very important to me. So if you look at where we were at the beginning of January, nobody knew when I filed this that they were actually having an affair and that he had taken her on all of these lavish vacations. When we filed the motion, everybody said, oh, well, she doesn't have proof. She didn't put proof in the motion, which is typical. And it was hard because the motion's pending, so I can't really speak publicly about it. But, that's how we file motions. Proof comes in the actual evidentiary hearing. So we have to allege enough to get an evidentiary hearing. And then we actually put the facts up. So, that was difficult. Then when she gave this church speech, I didn't know how she was going to respond. Is she going to admit to it? Is she going to deny it? Is she going to step aside? What's going to happen? But then she admitted to it. And so then it became an issue of when it started, which before I filed the motion, that wasn't even an issue. It's sort of like we switched the focus from all of the conduct to when it started. And I go back to the original motion. I don't know that it necessarily matters when it started. I still think that it reaches the standard of impropriety that requires her to disqualify. I don't know. I mean, we spent a lot of time fighting over when the actual affair started, but I've never thought that was a big issue. I mean, definitely it's more damning if it started before she hired him, but they renewed the contracts 3 times. So, they were definitely undisputed in a relationship when she renewed these contracts. And the contracts kept getting for more and more money. I also think that if you hide things you're doing, that usually is an indication that they're not something you should be doing. And people hide things for different reasons. But when you're a public official and you know that your life is going to be scrutinized, you have to be extra cautious. I've never been a public official. I don't have a desire to be a public official, but if you are a public official, you've got to keep records of things. Why you would pay cash to a man that you are sleeping with, and you are also paying in what is undisputedly one of the largest criminal cases in our legal history is beyond me. And so I think the public is right to question how this is allowed to go on.
It's absolutely reckless at a minimum. We know she did that. So why doesn't bouncing him off of the case cure it?
That was never what I imagined happening, because there is law in Georgia that says if one person in the case is bad, the whole case is bad. So, and we saw that with pre-indictment with Burt Jones, who is our lieutenant governor in Georgia. And Ms. Willis and her whole office had a conflict. She had the conflict, but the judge in that case, a different judge, Judge McBurney, kicked the entire office. And the law that he followed said, if she's got a conflict, the whole office has a conflict. So in my opinion, that's what the law says. It says if Mr. Wade has a conflict, the whole office has a conflict. And I do think the judge in his order was telling her you should step aside. But obviously, that's not going to happen. He just wasn't willing to take that next step and say, you have to step aside. But I don't think that you can split the baby like this. I've never thought that you could split the baby. I thought it was all or nothing.
I know you're in a tough position because you now have a criminal case in front of Judge McAfee that you have to try, presumably all the way to conclusion. So he's your judge and you have to be respectful. And I get it. I've been there. However, what do you think his motivation was in ruling the way he did? Because we've had a lot of people, our audience, and we've had experts come on the show to say this was political. He's running for re-election. The district went 73% for Joe Biden, and there was no world in which this judge was going to get reelected if he bounced Fani Willis off this case. What do you think?
I don't even have to answer that just to this judge. I can answer that to judges in general. If they have the choice of not deciding, that's what they do. And that just tends to be, what happens. If they can push it back on the parties to make the decision, that's commonly what happens. And I think that's what we saw here. We saw the safe play. We saw, okay, well, it's bad, but I'm putting it back on you to do. I'm putting it back on you, Miss Willis, to make the tough decision. Either you go, he goes, or I invite you both to go, is how I read the order, hoping that she would do the right thing. And we see that a lot. We see that with judges a lot. That's the safest route to take, to split the baby. And that's very common. And it's, most of the time that is justice, to be able to, make the parties figure it out on their own. But as we've seen in this case, that's not going to happen. She, for some reason, very, very much wants to continue on this case. Which is surprising. I can tell you in 20 years of practice, I've never once seen a DA who had a motion to disqualify not voluntarily disqualify, if there were any grounds. Never,
wow.
Never. And I've had it happen a couple of times, which is how I know the process, for another district attorney to be appointed. Anytime someone has said you've got a conflict and you need to be disqualified, the prosecutor's office is like, okay, bye. Like, good, because it's less work for them, and why be fighting that the entire prosecution? Why be trying to prosecute? Because
well, you answer the question, because to me, it seems clear she wants to be a star. She's using this case to make herself a celebrity.
100%. Her office found, and this was one of the details that kind of got lost in the mix, because it didn't have a ton of relevancy to our motion, so we couldn't focus on it. But she used $10,000 of taxpayer money to hire a media monitoring company. It's called Critical Mention. That's that. When I saw that, I was like, and the emails that are attached to it, they're clearly looking to put a dollar value on her publicity. And there's only one reason for that. She wants to do something further politically. That was just so obvious to me. And if I don't live in Fulton County, I live in an adjoining county, thank goodness, because if 10,000 of my tax dollars went to a district attorney paying to monitor her own media, I would be absolutely livid, particularly in Fulton County, where it is a third world country in that jail. It is awful. There's just so many problems in that county. And I used to live in Fulton
else?
County.
It's like there's a simple way of monitoring your media mentions, and you just put a Google alert on yourself. I don't recommend it. It's very depressing, but if she really wants to see the coverage of her name out there, she can do that. You don't need to spend taxpayer, $10,000 in order to find out what people are saying about you. She clearly is using it. And those comments that we just played just show it. She went to that women's event thing and got a heroine's welcome. And then they replayed, I'll show you on Friday after Judge McAfee's ruling, which allowed her to remain on the case, that same group put out this video celebrating her like she's the second coming. Here, let's watch some of it. It's just video, but in any event, you can see they're celebrating her. They're playing Beyonce. That look, Fulton County elected her, and I don't know, is there, she keeps playing the race card, so I'll ask you whether it's relevant. Is it a racial thing? I imagine Fulton County is predominantly minority. Is she trying to tap into some sort of racial grievance there by continuously bringing this up?
I think so. And I think it's important to look at the history of her office. She's a new prosecutor, but her first big case was the YSL case, which is it's a racketeering case against a rapper named Young Thug. That case is still pending. That case actually divided the community in Fulton County a lot, because she used rap lyrics and is still using rap lyrics and took the stance of using rap lyrics against those gentlemen who were charged in that case. And that was a very controversial decision in the Black community in Atlanta. And so I feel like part of this is her politically trying to regain that community that might have not been happy about what happened in the YSL case. So I definitely think it's political. And I think she's got higher political ambitions, which, surprised me. I knew her when I was a public defender and she was a line DA. It surprised me because how there's moments that you remember in your career where someone said something to you and it's sort of profound and it sticks with you. I have one of those with her. This was probably 15 years ago. I was a young public defender. She was a young prosecutor, and I had filed a motion on a double jeopardy, and I won on appeal. And I was still kind of unsure of myself and, felt bad shaking things up. And she said, don't ever feel bad about defending your client, because if you don't defend your client and you don't do everything that you need to do, my convictions won't stand and I can't do my job. And I said, that's a really good perspective. And I've always viewed it that way. So, being attacked, and these attacks have been personal, being attacked was sort of surprising to me, because all I'm doing is defending my client, and she knows me and knows that I'm not racially motivated, knows that I'm not, biased against women or anything like that. So it is kind of surprising.
And not biased against Nathan Wade. I mean, they pointed out in their opposition to your motion that you campaigned for him, I guess when he was running for judge, but you had supported him. Obviously, if his race or status as a man were a problem for you, you wouldn't have done that. I didn't think that inured against you. I thought it was the opposite. But of course, she's enjoying trying to lead people to believe that because it helps her. It's a low blow. I want to tell you about the Association of Mature American Citizens, or AMAC, an organization dedicated to America's seniors. AMAC stands out today by not only advocating for senior issues, but also by pushing for conservative values that affect us all. If you join, you're not just supporting America's senior citizens, you can become part of a movement defending our freedoms and securing our nation's future. Plus, membership brings you exclusive benefits like discounts on travel, dining, entertainment, and special insurance rates. Regardless of your age, if you're driven to preserve freedom, AMAC welcomes you. Sign up now at amac.us/Megyn. And for a limited time, get a free gift membership for someone who shares your love of our great nation. Don't miss out on this chance to make a difference with AMAC. Join today at amac.us/Megyn and extend the invitation to a friend or family member for free. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.